Karibu. It's going to be another action-packed day today. We have a lot on the program, so I'm really looking forward to this. I'm actually Dutch. We have no sense of humor, so it's going to be very, very official. So, to start off, we have 3 presenters in this session this morning, up till 11 o'clock, that will bring us. The presenters will each have about 25 minutes for the presentations, and then I would like to keep the questions for afterwards. So, if you all can write down the questions you have, and then at the end of the session, we'll come around with the microphone to answer all the questions. I also hope, by the way, that you enjoyed your cocktails last night. I think there's a few seats missing, people that couldn't make it today. It must have been a fun night. Right, so without further ado, we're going to start with introducing the first of our 3 presenters with us. And starting this morning is Dr. Evan Thomas. He is director of the Mortensen Center at the University of Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. Evan has a PhD in aerospace engineering sciences from the University of Colorado at Boulder. He is also a registered professional engineer and has a master's in public health from the Oregon Health and Science University. Evan's technical background is in water and air testing and treatment applied in developing communities through the operational spacecraft. He founded SweetSense Inc., which is supported by USAID and the National Science Foundation to develop and apply satellite connected sensors monitoring drinking water services. So a really important field. With that, I'm going to ask Dr. Evan to come and take the stand. Thank you.
Jambo. Nitwa Evan, and thank you for having me today. I'm going to share with you a little bit about the work that we have been doing in East Africa over the past almost 20 years to try to improve access to basic water, sanitation, and energy services. And a piece of this work is addressing the climate change-driven impacts on water access using climate finance. So actually taking funding that is emerging in the international markets for loss and damages that are being caused by climate change and applying them to drinking water services. There's the slides, great, thank you. So this is the planet. We all, of course, recognize this place. I like this because it kind of looks like a graphic. It's not, it's a series of stitched satellite pictures. So it's every place on Earth as a picture on a cloud-free day. But of course, this place looks familiar. Now, you're all geospatial experts, so of course you've seen this picture many times before, but just humor me for a second. What do you see in this picture? Just shout it out. There's a lot of cocktails last night. What do you see? You see cities, you see lights, you see people. When I ask this question to our students in the United States, they often say it's showing where people live. But of course, we know that this is showing where rich people live. It's showing where people who have a lot of energy live. And yet, still today in 2022, almost half the world's population, over 3.5 billion people in the world, still use firewood every day for the daily energy needs. So this is another image of infrared light. This is mostly campfires. Almost half the world's population, with a lot of it clustered, a lot of those people clustered here in sub-Saharan Africa, use firewood every day to cook and to stay warm. And of course, that use of biomass contributes to emissions. Black soot emissions is one of the largest drivers of global warming. Now, in contrast to many other sources of emissions, it's also an opportunity. The black soot from carbon emissions from the use of wood would drop out of the atmosphere in less than 14 days if we eliminated household cooking, whereas CO2 might take 20 years and methane might take 100 years. So it's actually a big opportunity to reduce global emissions if we can reduce the use of biomass fuels. The use of biomass also contributes to deforestation, to soil erosion, to loss of crops, and of course, household and indoor and outdoor air pollution. And respiratory disease, caused in part by these emissions, are one of the leading causes of illness and death globally. Still, in 2022, 5 million children under the age of 5 die every year from respiratory diseases. And about the same number, about 4 million children die every year from diarrheal diseases associated with unsafe water and unsafe sanitation. And unfortunately, these challenges are being exacerbated by climate change, which of course we're feeling here in Kenya. I just was in Isiolo yesterday, and even though it rained yesterday, just like it was raining here in Nairobi, there's an unprecedented 5-season drought in northern Kenya and generally in the Horn of Africa. And 40 million people are facing food insecurity this year, in part because of that drought. And so access to basic services like water, sanitation, energy, and infrastructure are being exacerbated. The problems are being made worse because of climate change in many regions of the world. And of course, the people living up in northern Kenya practically have no energy use at all. They didn't cause climate change. They're not really contributing to climate change. Climate change has been caused largely by emissions in North America and in Western Europe, and yet it's sub-Saharan Africa that is facing the first and greatest impacts of climate change. Dry places are getting drier, so we see drought, but also wet places are getting wetter, like in Rwanda, where we also work. You see increasing floods and crop failures because of floods and erosion. So these are who are using energy in the world. The United States is the single greatest historic emitter. The US has emitted more to the atmosphere of any country anywhere in the world. China passed us just a few years ago, but as you can see, this is CO2 emissions per capita, so per person. China is still a lighter color than North America because per person, even though overall China emits more every year now, just in the past few years, per person, the United States is still emitting 3 times as much. And in sub-Saharan Africa, there's practically no registrable energy use per person. So this is who is using energy in the world. And here's who's sick in the world. This is the global burden of disease. They're the inverse relationship. Let me go back and forth for a second. So if we go back, this is who's using energy, and this is who's sick. So burden of disease is still clustered in sub-Saharan Africa, and they're largely these environmental factors that are associated with energy poverty. Water, clean water access, safe sanitation access, safe, clean energy for cooking, safe transportation, safe infrastructure. So there's that direct relationship between health as an individual and your energy use, and yet that same energy use is making health problems harder in many places of the world. One of the earliest effects of climate change is changing rainfall patterns. As of course you are all expert, and I know all of you in this room study this, but the first thing we see with climate change, maybe these heat waves, you see crop failures, you see some things, disease spread, for example, malaria in Nairobi. Never used to be malaria in Nairobi, now there is, as the temperature, as the elevation at which the parasite can survive is increasing. But the major effect that we see is changing rainfall. Wet places get wetter, as I mentioned, and dry places get drier. And on the whole, a quarter of the world's population is water insecure. A quarter of the world's population is water insecure. In the United States, so we see that here in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Western US where I live, we see the same problem. The Western US is in a mega drought. We're in the 3rd decade now, this 22nd year of the first mega drought in 1,200 years. And we have about 40 million people relying on surface water in the Western US, and that water is drying up. And so both in the United States and in Africa and in other places of the world that face water stress, a major response is to mine groundwater. In the US, we've been mining water for 100 years, and so the ground level has dropped by 40 feet, literally. The surface of the ground has dropped 40 feet as we've been mining that water. Here in Africa, groundwater reserves have been increasing over the past several decades. There's only I think the numbers are only 3% of agriculture is irrigated in sub-Saharan Africa, and only 5% of that water is groundwater irrigated. So it's a relatively untapped resource. Now, of course, we don't want to go just mine all that water and exploit it, but it is a resource for mitigating the impacts of changing rainfall. So the field I work in international development, is largely funded this way. Money will come in from organizations like USAID or the World Bank or UNICEF to try to address some of these basic health challenges. So things like water filters, water pumps, cook stoves, latrines, that are designed to improve people's health and livelihood. But with this funding model where an organization might apply for a grant, implement a project, dig boreholes. Thousands of boreholes have been dug in northern Kenya in the past 10 years by international development agencies. There's no money for operation and maintenance. There's no money for the services. The local governments don't have unfunded mandates to keep a water pump running or to maintain access to an energy service. And often there's just not enough money for those operation and maintenance activities. As a result of that, half of water and sanitation projects that are installed every year with international donor funds fail within the first 18 months. So the model doesn't work that well. So what we're trying to do is introduce alternative models that can actually generate revenue for communities, for local governments, for national governments, and for companies to pay for services long term. So it looks like this. You have a water pump. You monitor that water pump, you generate money associated with that service delivery, which can then come back into providing that service. Now, where do we get it from? It's hard to raise funds from communities. Water is subsidized everywhere in the world. Wherever you live, whether it's Dubai or Nairobi or Denver, Colorado, any major city has subsidized water. I live in a city that has a lot of water and is relatively wealthy, and yet when I pay my water bill, I'm only paying for 60% of the cost of delivering me water. So if you then look in Isiolo or in Lodwar or in the other ASIL regions or in Rwanda, it's not reasonable to expect that local communities can pay for the full cost of delivering water. We need to find other ways to match fees from people, from consumers, with subsidies. And one method is with climate finance, where we can actually take money that's available for the loss and damage climate change is causing and apply it to delivering a service which is being impacted by climate change, in this case water. So let me show you a few examples of where we've done this. This is a hand pump. About 100 million people just in sub-Saharan Africa get water from these kinds of hand pumps. This is a picture from Rwanda, where our DG is from. And most Rwandans outside of Kigali get water from these kind of hand pumps. And yet half of them are broken at any given time, and half of the functional hand pumps are contaminated. So out of all of the people that might live nearby a hand pump, only a quarter of them are accessing clean water. And yet more and more of these are installed every year without models and business models or funding models to support them. So one of the things that our team has done over the past, it's been up over 10 years now, has been testing different technologies combined with different business models to try to sustain basic water services. This is a broken hand pump. Who here is an engineer in the room? Engineers. Okay, so that's a relief. My students, who are all engineers, will say, I can invent a better water pump. The problem must be the design of the water pump. The problem is not the design of the water pump, the problem is the design of the service. So how do we create incentives to maintain these water pumps? One of the methods we applied is satellite and cellular connected sensors that we've installed on, at this point, hundreds of pumps in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Rwanda, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, all over the place, to monitor when the pump is working, to identify when the pump is broken, and when our sensor says a pump is broken, we deploy a technician. So you go out there like an ambulance service and repair that pump. And we've done a number of studies all over the place with this type of infrastructure and seen some pretty substantial impacts on water access. In this study in Rwanda from a few years ago, when a pump was broken, it was typically broken for over 200 days. So more than half the year, a pump would be broken, and only about half of the pumps were working at any given time. When we use sensor technology to identify a broken pump and go and fix it, the repair interval was dropped to 20 days, and average functionality was brought to 90%. And in another study in Western province here, out in Kisumu, we did a study where we applied the same technology, but we added in machine learning. So we brought in data on precipitation, we brought in data, other geospatial data like population density, and looked at trends over time and applied a machine learning model. Using the machine learning model, we could actually predict when a water pump would break. So we could forecast a week ahead of time that a pump was about to break, a tire pressure warning light for a hand pump, and go and get functionality to over 99%. So we've now taken this concept to scale here in Kenya. This is our program, the Drought Resilience Impact Platform, which has been funded over the past 7 or 8 years by USAID, the US National Science Foundation, NASA, and we do this work in partnership with Rcmrd and our colleagues here in the room and the Millennium Water Alliance here in Kenya, where we are focused on deep groundwater boreholes. These are no longer hand pumps. These are deep groundwater boreholes that provide emergency water access during times of drought here in the ASIL regions. Dennis Macharia is one of our co-investigator on this, who's here at Rcmrd. He's also a PhD student with us at the University of Colorado, so this picture's just from yesterday in the field in Isiolo, but showing off both his Rcmrd and his University of Colorado pride. And these are the type of infrastructure. So these are generally PV-powered, deep groundwater boreholes, sometimes over 100 meters or even 200 meters deep, providing water to about 1,000 people and perhaps thousands of livestock per water point. And yet, while there are thousands of these up in northern Kenya, and we've also done this work in Afar Ethiopia and Somali region Ethiopia, about 40% of them are broken right now. So about 40% of these water points are broken and people don't have access to water. And this creates drought emergencies. People are displaced, livestock die. Any irrigation that is happening results in crop failure. People are displaced, people are moving around, and it creates emergencies where people don't have water access. So the goal of this initiative, and with all the partners, is fundamentally to maintain these water pumps. Can we keep these pumps running during peak drought? So this is our monitoring network. We have over 4 million people's water supplies we are currently monitoring with these satellite connected sensors today. So we have about 230 sites in Kenya and another about 250 sites in Ethiopia. Our partner also includes FuseNet, the famine early warning system, that use our data as another indicator of drought risk and drought response. And the data that we generate is now being used in Kenya by the National Drought Management Authority. So we have 5 counties in northern Kenya that every month use our data to as part of their NDMA drought bulletins to advise where there is water access and where there's water demand. And this work was funded, as I mentioned, by the USAID and NASA SEVERE program, which puts us in partnership with Rcmrd. This is another one of our data products where we actually take, let me go back a second, we take all of that sensor data, but then we add in rainfall data, greenness index, NDVI, we add in population density, we look at trends over time in all of those different indicators, and again, use machine learning to interpolate and forecast water demand. So this is one of our products hosted here at Rcmrd, where we can forecast the demand for groundwater across the entire region. So this is looking 3 months out at the demand for groundwater based on the fusion of our sensor data with remote sensing data and modeling. And so this is the actual product that is used by NDMA and the county governments to forecast water demand in the region. So now we're bringing this all together into a business model as well. This is our theory of change. And I'll just narrate, you don't have to read the text, but you can just look at the images on the bottom. We monitor water access, both with sensors and remote sensing and modeling. We can forecast drought and groundwater demand, and then we can link that to carbon credits, climate financing that will actually pay us, county governments, communities, NGOs, to maintain water points, to treat water, to ensure that people have reliable access to water, especially during drought, and take money from climate financing and apply it as a service. And this is fundamentally different than government funding, which requires annual appropriations, and it's different from donor funding, which is very infrequent and somewhat times challenging to get money to provide a service. So we use annual money from carbon credits to pay for drinking water access. So our vision, in partnership with Rcmrd and the county governments here, is a northern Kenya that has year-round, safe, clean drinking water access, and that is paid for through climate funding that is paying for the loss and damages that climate change is causing in the region. All right, thank you. I'll come back up after the next presenter for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Evans. That was Professor Thompson. This was great. For me, I had a couple of questions already written down. I hope you have too. But it was a very enlightening presentation. So our next presenter, there was a bit of a change in the program this morning because unfortunately our first presenter, Husna Mubarak from FAO, couldn't make it. She sent her apologies. So we've adjusted the program slightly. But we do have two more speakers. So the first speaker up is, and I hope she is in the room. Monica, are you here? There you are. Right, before she comes up, Monica Antiga. Monica serves as the Regional Director, Eastern and Southern Africa, with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. Monica has worked closely with civil society organizations, government agencies, startups, non-government organizations in East, West and Southern Africa in advancing the use of open source technologies and open data in humanitarian response and development. Please welcome Monica to the stage.
Good morning. All protocol observed. My name is Monica Ndega. I'm the Regional Director of the Open Mapping Hub with Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be able to share the work that we do with organizations and with different partners and communities in order to advance their work through the use of open map data. I'm going to share briefly a bit of the work that we've done to support organizations around the concept of smart cities and sustainable cities. And before I get to that, I'll start with a brief, just 1 minute. Yes, I'll start with a brief background of who we are as a humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. So we are an international NGO that's dedicated to humanitarian action and community development through open mapping. And our goal or our vision is to ensure that in each and every intervention that we have, that we are able to grow and develop communities that are having their needs addressed through mapping. The general citizens, humanitarian organizations can access and contribute to the OpenStreetMap, and that we can continuously contribute to high quality and validated open map data that's available and for use around different humanitarian and development issues. We're on a mission to strengthen the use of mapping as a tool in response. And we are doing this through a global campaign or global approach through 4 different hubs operating across 94 countries globally. The Eastern and Southern Africa hub is operating across 23 countries. And I'll be able to share briefly 2 of the projects that are really focused around the concept of smart cities shortly. So what is OpenStreetMap, and how do organizations, how do communities actually contribute to and use OpenStreetMap? OpenStreetMap is a collaborative project. Thank you. Okay. Good. OpenStreetMap is a collaborative project that allows contribution and data processing through 2 key processes. The first process is what we call remote mapping, and the second is what we call local mapping. So remote mapping essentially involves tracing buildings, tracing roads, tracing rivers, using around satellite imagery, using web-based tools. And what I mean by local mapping is adding local knowledge to a map. So we have the key satellite imagery features that are already within the map, the buildings and the roads. But how do we take that to the next step of actually adding context, adding information that communities and organizations use in their everyday lives. So how do we add a school on a map? Yes. How do we add the attributes that have to do with the building, the status of the building, the accessibility of the road? That often needs the presence and the knowledge of local organization. That's what we call local knowledge. The process of remote mapping and local mapping is then tied together through what we call validation, which means, again, ensuring that the data is of high quality, that the data passes the basic standards of usable and reusable data. Our work is centered around 5 impact areas and what we call 17 priority areas. So naturally, this does present a very huge data challenge, especially when it comes to local mapping. There's a huge need to embrace open map data sources to fill some of those gaps. Around 26% of the indicators that we know around the Sustainable Development Goals actually do need maps and geodata in order to measure. Less than a third, for example, of the city dwellers in sub-Saharan Africa have access to convenient public transport. And our population growth, it's estimated that by 2050, Africa's urban areas will be home to an additional 950 million people globally. The statistics look daunting, or it means that there is quite a lot of work that needs to be done in order to tie and to deliver programming or to deliver projects that actually can cover and ensure that the gap doesn't keep widening up. But it's also very encouraging that globally we are also seeing more and more countries actually adopting the concept of having local disaster risk reduction strategies, which means this is opening up an opportunity for community organizations, for development organizations like OpenStreetMap to partner and to be able to widen, to stop the widening of any gaps around data sources. I briefly mentioned that we are really focused on a few of the SDGs. And one of the key sustainable development goals that OpenStreetMap is directly supporting or continues to directly support is around the sustainable cities and communities. One of the things that is really central or core is that we are clear on what we need to measure, we are clear on what we need to map. But these processes often mean that we need people to actually validate that data. So how do we accurately determine that the data on the ground around, say, water-related issues is actually current, is consistently updated? This means that, again, we bring in the concept of community mapping, we bring in the concept of having different organizations doing local validation of the data. The second key area that we are really keen on is around the proportion, for example, of rural populations that live within access to certain facilities, access to certain key infrastructure. If you're talking of access to an all-season road, again, it actually means that there is a lot more that goes into that process. It means to know we need to know where this road is, we need to know what the road is actually used for, and we need to know how frequently people use that road. We need the metadata around that. I'll briefly talk through one of the key projects that we're implementing in Kenya, which is the flood risk planning in Nakuru. We're working together with, apologies for that. We're working together with the Nakuru City Board, the Microsoft AI for Social Good initiative, and the OpenStreetMap communities in Kenya. Through the project, we've been able to add over 5 million buildings onto OpenStreetMap. And how this process works is, the first aspect of it is we have AI-generated imagery, in this case, largely it's buildings. And this data is then added onto OpenStreetMap by a team of community mappers. This data then forms what we call a base layer against which the Nakuru City Board then goes ahead to add onto that data and include additional, additional key features that then inform their city planning work. So the project has progressed in terms of being able to generate a really solid use case around the data that communities can generate going on to inform the work of a local county authority. The second project that I'm going to mention is Ramani Huria, which is an initiative that's aimed at making Dar es Salaam a flood-resilient city. The project has embraced a community mapping approach, which entails risk identification, empowering local citizens. By this I mean training universities, training local leaders into how to use the OpenStreetMap tools, but also integrating those OpenStreetMap with local tools. So we do have the satellite imagery, but the concept has to involve the ability to support mobile data collection, and then consistently being able to create open knowledge through documentation. Open data is very regenerative, which means that provides us with an opportunity to go back, edit it, re-edit it, and reuse it, and which is a concept that we aim to advance and to support through all the initiatives that we do within OpenStreetMap. Yes, so I'll conclude there, and I'll invite you to join OpenStreetMap. Anyone can map on OpenStreetMap. Any organization can use OpenStreetMap. You can map anywhere with OpenStreetMap, and I'll be glad to have conversations on how to support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. That was a great presentation. Can we give another round of applause, please? Thank you. So I personally love OpenStreetMaps because, when you go somewhere new and you've never been before, and you just open OpenStreetMaps and you can walk everywhere because there's the little red dotted trail that you can take. It's, amazing. Right, so our next presenter is sitting at the back, I believe. Is that correct? Yes? So I'll turn around, please. This is Professor Simon Oniveri from Kenyatta University, and he works for the Department of Spatial and Environmental Planning, the School of Architecture and the Built Environment. Oh, thank you for coming up. Here we go, Professor Simon.
I'm presenting a story map, so I have to swap through the story map. You forgive me because I'm one from there. But you hear the voice and see me there.
It's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. I feel your pain. We should have a clicker for those story maps. I agree. Where's the Esri technology team? So just to continue with Dr. Oniveri's CV, he's also a research associate and a fieldwork coordinator for the Kenyatta University Women Economic Empowerment Hub, which is funded by the Gates Foundation. He's also an Esri Eastern Africa GIS champion winner 2014, an Esri GIS ambassador in 2018 nomination award, and he has been researching on lakes in the Rift Valley. Is that correct? Correct. All right. Without further ado, Professor Simon, please walk us through your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I must confess that I have a team of students who have been supporting me in putting together the story map. Wherever they are, if they can just stand up, Paris and Fred and Mary, you can just pop up wherever you are seated. It's good to see you, great people. Just pop up where you are seated. Mary is at the far end. Paris, where's Paris? And Fred. Okay, wherever they are. Thank you very much. Thank you. They helped me put together the story map. I'll proceed to take you through the Rift Valley Lakes level rise, and specifically focusing on the biophysical and ecological dilemma in Lake Baringo, Bogoria area. I hope you are aware of what has been going on in the Rift Valley. I'm also hoping you are aware of the Rift Lake systems in the Rift Valley. They are actually divided into 3 blocks in Kenya. The first block is what we call the Turkana Basin block, has Lake Turkana, Lake Logipi, and Lake Baringo here.
And the second block is what we call the Central Basin. It has Lake Bogoria, Nakuru, Elementaita, and Naivasha, and some other lakes at the top here. And then the last of these blocks is what we call the Magadi Basin, which also includes the Natron Basin in Tanzania. So these are the lakes are organized, and all of them, as was mentioned maybe in other forums, have been experiencing lake level rise for the since 2010, let me say. Since 2010, the OND of 2010, and which the lake level rise also reflected in the more recent years, 2018, in Lake Victoria itself, Lake Tanganyika, and Lake Malawi. So this is an experience of that has created impact that you will see later on of a significant impact in the Rift Valley. But just to put it into context, that is the country, Kenya, and the country Kenya is actually divided into two drainage basins, we call them, river basins. Six river basins. And you can see the Rift Valley Basin is the brown one in the middle here. And basically, all the drainage from the escarpments here on the western escarpment and the eastern escarpment here drain into the rift floor. Much of the water disappears into the pyroclastics in the rift floor, but some of it also gets it this way into the basins. There has been what we are calling a dilemma in the basins. Water is accumulating in the lakes and is rising quite fast. And to just inform you, Lake Baringo, which is a little to the north of Lake Bogoria, that's some 22 kilometers away, is a Ramsar site. Those of you are familiar with wetlands of significance. Lake Baringo, Bogoria are both of them Ramsar sites, but Lake Baringo itself is this Ramsar site number, and it's at an elevation of 969 kilometers elevation. Just note that number, because I'm going to also speak into the rest of what is happening to the waters and the risk that is there in the ecology in that particular area. And of course, it's bordered by the Laikipia Escarpment, the Tugen Hills, and it receives quite a number of rivers, Endau River, Berkera River, Molo River, Olarabel River, and the Loboi River feed into Lake Baringo. And there are also a number of swamps around that lake. And in 1994, Lake 94 developed, although it started developing in 1992. I have a map here, which then, just zoom out here, you will see I've put in a number of numbers there, and the numbers are basically to show you where these features are. I could zoom into any of these features, and of course of significance is this island here, we call Kokwe Island, which hosts one of the smaller tribes in Kenya. The the Ilichimus people live here, and they depend basically on the fishing in this lake and the water from that lake. And you can see the other features here. I can take you to Molo River, for example. It's a river down here, and if we zoom into the river of Molo River, you will see that it passes through this zone here. Here's the river here, and moves on into winding through into the swamp, this swamp here, and feeds the swamp. And significantly, you can see the waters are spreading around here, and it's literally being prevented from getting into the lake. And you can see roughly that this area is getting flooded, and you can see the flood now here. So the waters of the river, you can see the river in here, is being prevented from going to the lake because the lake's level have risen significantly. And that is affecting the farmlands. You can see the farmlands around here, and many other utilities in this particular area. And it's a very bad situation in this particular environment and around the lake. as again you will see later when we look into this. Lake Bogoria on the other side is a Ramsar site, and I told you to note 969. It has 991 meters above sea level, which means the lake is higher by some meters. And of course, if there is a flow, much of the flow will be from that lake into Lake Baringo. Significantly, this lake is a saline lake hosting about 4 million flamingos plus. And of course, with the filling of the lake with the fresh water, the algae that feeds the flamingos are no longer doing so, and there is a challenge in the algae in that area. And again, just to put into context the lake, here you have the lake here. You have a number of numbers I've selected to just show you various features. And I can just take you to Waseges River here, for example, and then zoom through. The link will be provided to you, and you can share. You can go through this story map in the manner I'm doing, and you can see number 5 here, which is Kisibor Swamp, and you can see this lake is actually moving towards Kisibor Swamp. Here, you can see the dark area, so it has filled up and flowed into Kisibor Swamp, and literally is attempting to flow into this other swamp here. And that's an ecological problem because the lake is saline, alkaline in nature. The swamps are freshwater swamps, and you can see that the water, because of the submergence, is literally burning the vegetation in that area. The lakes in normal times are just about 22 kilometers apart, 27.7 to 21.7 to be sure. But at the moment from our mapping in the field, the lakes are moved closer to one another, and there's only 7.4 kilometers left for them to cover on the surface. Of course, you know water behaves in a manner that it also infiltrates into the ground. And were we to do borehole testing, I'm sure we'll find that these lakes have already merged underground. But we haven't done that type of testing. And to show you the significance of this, here are the 2 lakes apart. In normal times, the distance here is just about 22.8 kilometers, the one we have indicated here for this line here. This is Lake Bogoria here, Lake Baringo here, and you can see the distance when they are not flooded. Of course, this lake formed by the damming of Molo River that passes through here. And if I swap this glass, you'll see where the water has reached. You can see that. So you can see how in this part of Baringo, you can see where the water is. So the water has significantly moved down. And this part of Bogoria, you can see the water significantly moved to the north. There's a glass swap on the image, and the distances are there. In the current situation, the water is. We could find water here. We could also find water here on the surface, and the distance here at that particular time when we were in the field was about 11.9 kilometers apart. But with Molo River now flooding, the distance is from about here to this area here, which is about 7 kilometers away. Baringo on the other side has also been flooding. At the moment, that's Baringo in normal circumstances. At the moment, that's filled the place by about 136 square kilometers. You can imagine a land of 136 square kilometers has been submerged, which translates to about 100, more than 100% of the area that is flooded. And we did some digitizing work and some kind of utilization of the current images of Landsat and Sentinel images, and we came up with this conclusion. You see the blue line here is where the lake was. This blue line here is where the lake was in 2010. So the inside of it is the lake itself, the island is here. And then the yellow line is what we determined as where the lake was in 2014. And the red line is where the lake is in 2020. And you can see that a lot of land has actually been submerged, considering that the blue line just covers this area here in this particular domain. And these has implications on the population settled around there. You can see the changes that have taken place over time. The lake itself, in normal circumstances, is about 130 square kilometers, but of course it has increased to around 264 square kilometers. That's a significant area rise in that particular environment. And yeah, this is just snapshots of the area. And Lake Bogoria on the other side, you can also see the image here. We also digitized this work and determined the area that has been flooded. Again, the blue line, you can see the blue line originally was here in 2010, but it has now increased all the way to this particular area, therefore covering all this area and flooding it. And the changes again, the lake is normally 34 square kilometers, but it has increased to about 43.26 square kilometers, a change of about 8.9%. And much of this is towards the north and towards the areas that are covered by the springs. And you can see this is an image of 2010, and you can see the land is just bare. People settled around here, there are roads around here. But when we go down to the current image, you can see what has happened. So a lot of people have been displaced. A lot of houses here are underwater. The national park gate itself is underwater, and that's a challenge in this particular area. And we determined the route that the water will take. I hope this image will come up. Okay, I hope the image will come up. If it doesn't come up, no problem. We determined where the route the water will take. Wow, that's not very kind. It's not very kind. But we have determined how the water will move, and if in case there's going to be submergence on the surface, the water will flow through from Waseges Delta into Kisibor Swamp together to moving towards Riboi River, into Luboi Swamp, and then into Ngarua Swamp, into Molo River, and we are done. This is a very interesting image here, but I think because of Wi-Fi connection, maybe you are not able to see. Maybe it is this one, yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay, the image is down here. So I'll show you, this is Molo River. So moving down Molo River, up in the Mogotio area here, you can see a lot of silt. This carries a lot of silt. So one of the problems in Lake Bogoria is the siltation in that lake. And then if I move down, I'll get you to Loruk area. This market center here, of course, the images, we are depending very much on the Google Earth map images that are online. But the Google Earth images have not been able to show the current status, but they can assure you the water is here because these market centers here are along the road here, these shops here. And you can see the water came right through and they submerged that area of the water. You see the water is here, this water just flew up and submerged the whole of this area here, including this particular school in the north of the lake. We call Loruk area. So this is the lake here moving towards Loruk. I move down to take you to the Kisibor Swamp. You can see the Kisibor Swamp is quite wet. You can see this vegetation is drying up because of submergence. And therefore the water of Lake Baringo, in particular now, Lake Bogoria here, is moving towards the north. And this particular picture was taken in this area, and you can see the burning, the brown areas here is the vegetation that is burning, and you can see what is happening in Kisibor Swamp here. Yeah, this is looking down towards the south. You can see how the water is, saline water. You can see the coloration here of the salinity, and you can see the impact it's having on the vegetation. And then somewhere quite inside the land, here, you see this is number 5. The water was here, we couldn't proceed on the road out this way, and therefore we were somewhere around here, and you can see the water is just here. And this water has filled up farms. You can see all the farms here are basically underwater. A number of buildings, this building, you can see this underwater. A number of schools also in this area are underwater. and it's a significant impact in the area in terms of the flood area in this particular zone. So I move you down to see the Lake Bogoria itself. The Lake Bogoria, actually, much of the area that discovered by the hot springs have been submerged. There are very few flamingos now in this particular environment, depending on very much on the hot springs in that particular area. And then you can see the gate, the KWS gate, which is just these buildings here, and many other buildings in this area are submerged. And it's not possible to utilize this gate to get the back. They have to shift the gate to another location altogether. Wow, that's a bad situation in that part of the Rift Valley. And we have determined, of course, that the OND has been significantly been receiving good amount of rainfall, especially in the western part of the rift. The same with the MAM in the various years. And of course, the increased discharge from the runoff is also leading to increased discharge in the springs. And this is what is leading into the lakes filling up with water. There's also quite a bit of sedimentation you saw from the character of the rivers, and this is attributed to the catchment degradation, of course, increased pavement because of the settlement of the people and the farming activities that are taking place, are also some of the challenges that are there. So some graphs here to just show you the rainfall variability in this area. There has been, normally in some months we don't get rainfall at all, but this particular period we got quite a bit of rainfall throughout the period. And you can see that there is no month that did not have rainfall. And yet in the previous times, we have some months which don't have rainfall at all. And of course, the impacts are much. There are a lot of impacts here. The number of households that have been displaced are about 3,087, maybe more. Just counting the households, actually these are the households that have been displaced. So if you imagine a household has 5 children, I don't know, the people there could be having up to 7 children anyway. You can multiply that and you'll see we are talking about 20,000 people who have been displaced. 24 schools, learning institutions have been affected. At least 10 schools were completely submerged underwater, and 14 of them are partially submerged. And of course, you can't learn in such a learning environment, and the children had to be displaced to other schools. And with the distances, we fear that most of the children may actually not be going to school at all. You heard the story of Marigat 2-3 days ago. There was a flood in Marigat area there, but we also know that Marigat-Karandi Road is submerged as you go along the shores of the lake. Electricity lines are also underwater in various villages in that area. Health facilities are underwater in that area. At least 12 of them we counted. And of course, the magnificent tourist hotels in that area are also underwater. And some pictorial here to just help you see what we are talking about. This is one of the hotels here, the Soy Hotel. You can see this actually underwater. By the way, this is the first floor. This water is at the first floor because this is the second floor and this is the third floor. And you can see the kibanda near the lake is submerged. The fisheries department offices and very many other buildings, you can see the effect that this has had. And the team proposes a number of intervention measures. Those who wish to support this particular community, they need food, they need shelter, they need emergency health services. They face impacts of snake bites and also other wildlife like hippopotamus and crocodiles are also moving towards now where the limited space where these people are living, and it's creating a problem on them. There is need, of course, to go through a process for livelihood restoration and jumpstart businesses and other activities in that area. This is a medium-term activity, depending on whether the people have determined the maximum area where it has been flooded. And of course, in the long term, we need to replan this area and, of course, institute measures to ensure that people don't settle in the riparian areas of the lakes. That's a policy issue. And we hope that we will continue engaging so that the government of the day can also look into this problem. The lake waters have not gone back, by the way, so the waters are still where they were, as you saw in the chambers, and that's how it is. The capturing of the images, some of the images we have here, the photographs were done in the field for us by KU TV. We have a television program, and in particular, Irene Simiyu and Anita Masharia and Joan Burundi were with us in the field to help document some of this. And there are also some links in KU TV where you can see what has happened in that area as it was documented in 2020. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was a great presentation. And also, student, thank you very much for helping create the story map. It was great. What I really liked about this is it's geology and geography that we're talking about here. And of course, geology rocks, but geography is where it's at. So I'll try another one. Being Dutch, you know, I'm not sense of humor. I have to rely on jokes from my website, so here we go. So what did the tectonic plates say bumped into each other? My fault, sorry. Anyway, so this was the 3 presentations. We had some really fantastic presentations, all showcasing. At the back, we have a microphone. Yeah? Okay, so at the back, we have a microphone. So can I ask the presenters to come back here? And yeah, then we can get started. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand and let us know who you are and who the question is for, please. We have some hands being raised here in the front. This gentleman here was the first one, and I think we have quite some time. So if something pops onto your mind while we're talking, we have another at least 15 minutes for questions, so we're good on time. And please come here. Over here.
Good morning. This is Augustine Amuto.
Is it working?
This is Augustine Afula from the Geohealth Hub, Eastern Africa, where we measure the air quality for health. So when I have 2 questions, Dr. Ivan and also Professor Nyere. Dr. Ivan touched a bit of an area where I also have an interest. He talked of we are what we breathe, the disability adjusted life years, the air quality, the indoor issues. I think that's a really growing area of interest, and I think really very important. Also, what we drink. Now, going to what we drink, the failing pumps. Being an M&D practitioner over the years, having done a lot of it in the northern Kenya, one thing that we find almost all the time is that from a baseline report, you find that mid-term and even sometimes end-term results sometimes cannot be sort of explained well. For a reason that an entity, an NGO may come, start with new pumps, new boreholes, but there are other dying ones. So when they do a baseline, maybe the distance to a water source by households, even the mean for that community may have been a figure, let's say 5 kilometers. But down the lane, maybe 5 years down the lane, you'll find it has gone to 6 kilometers. So often we have conflicts with the people that the clients we do evaluation for. Is your data right? The data is right. The only thing is that a number of boreholes became dead. So when they started, the distance to and fro to the water source was fairly okay. Then the NGO came and started their own. In the meantime, the others that were there when they started became dead. So I think that's an area of growing interest. I'm happy that at least there is a group that is trying to check the malfunctionality of the boreholes. I think that's an area that needs to be picked up very strongly by both the partners of development and also the county government, because when you start things new and you leave the others, what about the distance between any two boreholes, even though one may be dead? Subsidence issues, of course, are there. So I think that's an important area to then continue monitoring. Now, that was for Evan. By the way, University of Colorado, we have a colleague, Professor John Summit, that is also one of the PIs in the GeoHealth Hub where we operate. Then my other question, or other comment, and maybe question, Professor Nywere, who was also my colleague in KU for many years. The lakes receding was there some years back. It was a concern. Doing my MPhil research in Lake Victoria, 1992, 94, there was a concern that the Lake Victoria levels were coming down. It was a major concern then. Come 2020, the levels again were rising. So that me coming from Imbo Usenge, then what you call the Mombasa Raha Hotel, which had been built in one of the locations, was sort of submerged. It was one of the best hotels in the small town. It was submerged. So basically we are talking about, could it be that the lake is just claiming its space? Could we could be using that information of the rising and the declining so that we are able to define within this place, this is a disaster zone. Can we let our people know that this is not an area to have anything permanent for construction and even for residents? Because often we cry disasters, but you see, we go to places which is like a home of the lake. If you go to live in a home of the lake, what do you expect if the lake starts reclaiming its space? So I think, Prof, that's an area where I think we need to start defining, using even working closely with the county government, so that they define, so that we have a clear plan. This is a no-go zone, this is a disaster zone, you can be caught up with the water any minute. I think that's an important thing. The last thing, maybe for the name I forgot, open mapping. I've been a volunteer mapper of some of the locations. So me, when you go to that mapping and you put the name Augustine Afulo, you can go to my home in the village without asking until you reach there. So I've been, some homes, almost 30 homes in that village are mapped. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those questions and comments and explanation. Evan, would you like to comment on the first item?
Yeah, sure. I think there are a couple points that you had there. One is just this chronic problem of delivering clean water services. Much of this work has been funded by donors in this region over 50 years, and yet access to water is not universal by any means. And so part of the objective is with county governments, with national entities, but also with donors to incentivize service delivery. And a piece of that is data. You know, where are their people, where is their water demand, where is their water access, where is it clean, and create models to actually incentivize the service instead of just incentivizing, as you pointed out, drilling another borehole.
Yeah, and the coordination and collaboration between all these entities, I think, was one of your other points as well. That's really necessary. Yeah. Professor Nywere, yeah, can you?
Thank you, Afulo. Yeah. I did not give you the full story. Part of the story, you'll get it. There is a link we can also give to Regional Center. I think maybe they have it because we did a lake scoping. All the lakes, the government did a scoping of those lakes. I was part of the exercise. I went to Lake Turkana, and what I showed there, I didn't like it. Graves underwater is not a good thing in Africa. So what it is, people have settled in areas, what we call the territory of the lake. But we should have known that this is the territory of the lake, because this is not the first time the lakes have swelled. In a 50-year cycle, we call it, 1901, going all the way to almost 1993, 1903. There is a record of the lakes flooding, actually, at that time, by the explorers who were here. And then in 1962, when we just got independence, all the way to 1964, there was a reporting of the flooding of all the lakes in the Rift Valley. And now, in 2009, 2010, I can tell you I actually went to the lakes because I was worried about the lakes dying. So a very nice mapping of the lakes at their status when they were at their lowest. Almost everybody was saying that the lakes are dying. The only thing that happened is that in 2012, I went to Baringo to do another activity related to health. Communities are consuming borehole water, but the borehole water have elevated the fluoride. And when I was having a community meeting, as I approached my project to start it, they tell me, wait a minute, we are not interested in the boreholes or the fresh water. What we want to know is where the water that has come into our homes and schools is coming from. You know, I had no idea whatsoever. And this is the value of satellite images. So I said, okay, I don't know, can you take me there? They took me to one of the schools called Salabani, and the water was there in the classrooms, and these pupils were not in the classrooms. So we stopped doing that project, came back, and started looking at the images backwards, time series backwards. And we found actually the lake started rising in the October, November, December of 2010. And since then, they have not stopped. So this is true. Many of the magnificent establishments, Lake Baringo was the first one. Lake Baringo Lodge was the first one to actually, and Roberts Camp were the first one to get underwater. And when you're talking about getting underwater, it's not the type of thing you saw. When you go, if you go to Lake Baringo right now, the only thing you'll see is the top of the chimney. So the top of the chimney will be something like a distance of how much? I have no idea. Maybe 10 meters, something like that, the top of the chimney. You know, you measure the house up to the ring beam, then you measure the roof that is over like this, and then you measure the chimney that must stick out. Those particular hotels are submerged up to the top of the ceiling. That's a significant amount of water that has filled the lake. But if we know that that is the territory of the lake, the next thing now will be the planning. Unfortunately, the way man is, they will see land, and the next thing they will want is that I can make use of that land to live, and they will go there to live. And this is a high time the government started implementing riparian zone management programs that ensures that the people use the riparian areas for the right thing. But I didn't mention the entire vegetation community in those areas that have been submerged is all dead. All the yellow fever acacia is dead. And anything that used to rely on those vegetation for life moved away or died if they could not move away. That's an ecological issue, and those of you students who are interested in issues of ecology, ecological damage, and things like that, there you are. I just gave you information where problems are, and you can go there and explore more about one of the issues in that problem. Thank you.
Yes, Monica, please. I think the addition that I could make, which you pointed out to, is accepting that there are huge variations to the challenges and the problems, particularly when it comes to the validation of the data. And one of the hard realities is when it comes to local knowledge, which is essentially what will get you the details of, or will get you querying the number of buildings added on a map, whether they actually exist, whether they're usable, whether they have doors, is quite controversial in the sense that we rely on human capital, and some of the constraints around that is that it's largely voluntary based when it's an initiative that's not owned by a local community. So what that means is you're introducing time constraints as a factor to continuously keep monitoring and keeping updating the different amenities and village names that you have. So that's a harsh reality, which means again the need for local for communities that actually live in those areas being trained, being involved in the actual data collection, in the actual mapping. Otherwise, there is often a tendency that we will have data that's a bit disconnected. and also just accepting the reality that different programming comes in with different goals and different needs, which is what the local teams can actually bridge. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you very much, presenters. We have time for a couple more questions. I think there was a question earlier. Yeah. Oh, there's a few. Ladies first, I would say. I'll take it. Thank you very much, presenters, for some very inspiring presentations there. My name is Georgina. I work with a non-profit, tomorrownow.org. We leverage transformational philanthropy to connect next generation weather technologies, climate technologies with communities most in need. And our hypothesis really centers around this idea that with better technology and better data and better access to that data, we can make a real difference, right? We can make a real difference to your work, to climate adaptation, and to our collective humanitarian goals. And the reason that I'm standing here sharing that hypothesis with you is that it is a hypothesis, and there is huge amounts of investment going into improving the quality of data and access, especially for weather, at a public level through national Met services, at the private sector around the world, as well as humanitarian international development agencies pouring money into this problem, because we all know it's important. The question is, where do we prioritize? And the speakers here, you're all working with environmental weather data, whether it's historical data, real-time data, forecast data, here on the continent. And we know historically the data hasn't been good enough. And so, to my question, I'd love your perspective, given the projects that you're working on today and the urgency of climate adaptation here on the continent. Where should we prioritize as a community? And I'm sure that there's many innovators in this room who could benefit from that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. It's an important one. Evan, do you want to?
I have a quick comment. As you mentioned, data is important. Everyone in here, these are a bunch of data geeks, right? So we all love technology, we all love data. And of course, we all know that data quality matters, that the cost of accessing the data matters, that the decision support tools that are created is what ultimately, also really matters. What we found repeatedly, and I'm sure you have too, is that unless the stakeholder that you're targeting actually has a budget and a mandate and an incentive to act on the data, then all we have is the storybook, right? Or our maps showing where there's water demand or a broken water pump, but nobody that can go out and act on it. Even if people want to, and that the data is useful to them for planning purposes, unless there is funding, an incentive with funding attached to go act on the data, we generate a lot of maps and we generate a lot of reports, but we don't necessarily generate a lot of action. And so, we've, in our particular little niche of this problem, have really focused on, what data is useful to the people that have the money to act on the data.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The truth is, government entities have departments that are actually meant to collect some data. For example, KMD collects rainfall information, and we should already be knowing what's happening with the rainfall dynamics and so on. The data is there, but the issues of data access and availability is actually one of the problems. I know the regional center, and I've been around Emmanuel for a while. I started working in the regional center way back in, not working, as a student. I came to the regional center way back in 1988. That's a long time ago. And I know the USGS has been investing in providing us with Earth observation data. And there is Earth observation data as way back as you can think of 1972. But maybe some of you will just say, oh, that's very low resolution, I need something else. But the low resolution also has information. It's a question of courage to use the information that is there to see what is happening, but also to make sure that the data the information we extract from this data is available in open portals. And I'm glad that Rcmrd has actually, and many other entities I saw, Digital Africa and others, have actually created portals where you can go in and either get information or see information that is there. The problem is we, the students, me included, I'm still learning, we are not exploring enough. You want to be food we put in your mouth. No, nobody will put food in your mouth. You must first of all cook it actually, and then eat it. It will be sweet if you know actually how to cook it. And I encourage you to explore these portals, especially the ones that is available locally here, and make use of it, including the one that is there in Ikipak. I'm not seeing Ikipak around, but they also have a data portal that you can also make use of, and it's giving very useful information about the moisture and the moisture availability dynamics in the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a few more questions and a few more minutes to answer questions. So maybe first there, and then to the gentleman over there, and then to the lady at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Craig Van Hagen. I started a company here in Kenya recently. Just a general interest question for Professor. Do you think that those lake expansions are purely rainfall, or is there some groundwater recharge coming from aquifers as well? And probably related to that, Dr. Evan, if you are seeing your, with your boreholes, are you seeing groundwater rise or fall?
Fortunately, I'm a geologist actually. I didn't tell you that. I didn't give you the background. I have a PhD in geology. And in particular, I have a PhD in structural remote sensing geology. So the issues of how the structures and rifting in the Rift Valley behaves and what it will do is now the question we are raising. Is this a question of plate tectonics that is creating some kind of pressure of underground water and so on and so on? If that happened, if actually that happened, what will happen is that the first thing we'll see increased fumaroles coming out, heated water coming up. And we have not seen that. Of course, there has been a lot of doubt whether the rainfall will have this significant impact. The truth is, when you are in Nairobi and you are the eastern part of the country now, you will just, if somebody tells you that there is water filling up the lakes, you will just dismiss him with finality. But we have a link, because one of the things that led the government to go to the lakes was the fact that Takwel Dam was just there. It was remaining half a meter to flow over, and they had no idea what will happen. And given that the previous year, 2019, the Takwel River behaved in a way that it actually flew through the Lodwar town, and it was marvelous to see the flow through the town. But it was a disaster, but nobody died because it happened at 5. And it happened at night, everybody would have just been swept away. So we thank God for that. But the reality is, from that observation, then we put in place a mechanism of getting a report of the level gauging in Takwel. And you know what? The level gauging in Takwel went that when the rain stopped. In the last 2 months, the rains have been there, but the lake level rise is now going in very big jumps in Takwel Dam. And it's actually moving up very fast. Although if it stops raining, you will just see. So I don't need to be told that it is raining in Western Kenya or not. I just need to look at the data that is sent to us every day at 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. And I'm able to see that it is raining in the western part of the country, whether it is in Uganda or wherever, it doesn't really matter. I know it is raining there. And I know it is a lot from the amount that is filling up. But I also know that the water is leaving the catchment very fast. Because if it rains today, I should not see the signal tomorrow in the lake, unless the water is moving very fast. So there is the issue of also land degradation. So all this combined, we concluded there could be some tectonic problems, but they are not significant enough to create the type of level rise that we are seeing. But also the quality of the water. When you mention the quality of the water, there is no evidence that there is juvenile water, if you understand what I mean, young water in the system at all, because it will come with certain isotopes. Those isotopes are not there. So what we are seeing is actually terrestrial runoff, from the silt, you can actually see even where the silt is coming from. Thank you very much.
Very briefly,
Yeah,
so we have 2 more questions.
Sure, just quickly on the groundwater piece. It's a big data, it's a significant data challenge. Groundwater is not easily detected with remote sensing. We have GRACE that can tell you, 400 square kilometer resolution, and the GRACE satellite has been useful in revealing that groundwater reserves have been increasing on the continent over the past 20 years, but that's a really gross indicator, right? That's across the entire continent. We know groundwater reserves are increasing, and it kind of makes sense. It's not being used very much. Locally, there's obviously local drawdown issues, there's salinity issues, there's fluoride issues, there's microbial contamination issues with shallow surface water sources, and there's very little data. There are very few pressure divers in northern Kenya, or really in the region at all, telling us on a telemetry basis anything about groundwater health. So it's very data sparse.
Thank you. So we had 2 more questions over there. The lady at the back and the gentleman. Okay, yeah, go for it, please.
My name is Vincent Imala from the Directorate of Resource Survey and Remote Sensing. Thank you very much, Professor Nyere, for the wonderful presentation. And this is actually an activity, the scoping mission, in which actually DRCRS participated fully as far as remote sensing and satellite image analysis is concerned. And as far as the rising water levels is concerned, we are aware that there are several factors that come into interplay, including the geological, hydrological, and land use pattern. And one of the factors that was actually determined to be having a big impact was the land practice in the upstream that was actually contributing to acidification of the waters in the rising lakes. My question is that even after the scoping mission that was undertaken and being spearheaded by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, sponsored by the UNDP, there was a draft report that actually was published with a lot of objectives and policies that were advised to the government to implement. So I believe that so far nothing has been done with regard to understanding, first of all, the impact, the adverse effect of these rising water levels. What's the position so far? Because we have seen Nakuru County that so far has earmarked a program to demarcate the levels of the rising waters. What has happened to these other counties in which the scoping mission was undertaken? Actually, that's where science meets policy. Thank you.
Since we are all remote sensing scientists, I believe, if you are in GIS and remote sensing and you came to Rcmrd to this conference, you must be interacting with remote sensing data in one way or another. Please go to Google app, put on the time series bar, and go through all the lakes from whichever time and see the changes and the impact these lakes are having in the ecosystem. It will help us a lot to even put pressure on the government, because if you imagine that the government, most of these people officers are sitting somewhere, they are enjoying their nice offices and so on, and occasionally if there is a real problem, they say, can I have a flight? Then they fly, they say, oh, there is a problem there. And then they go and sit again. So I was part of the scoping of the lakes by the Ministry of Environment. It was a very intense exercise, and it brought in a lot of data, a lot of information, supported by UNDP and USAID. Actually, it was part of the teams that supported this program. The government itself supported the program, and there were teams of almost 10 times 60 people, 60 researchers out there collecting data and information, documenting and giving proposals on it, what needs to be done. What happens after that, my friend, I have no idea, because we gave the report, it was given to the government, and right now my presentation might be putting some pressure on people, and that is good. So we must continue talking to put pressure on the government. Coming to what Lake Nakuru is doing, it may be a good thing, but also a publicity thing, because Lake Nakuru
I don't know how much land is left. The entire riparian zone of Lake Nakuru was submerged, and I think there was a lot of pressure on buffaloes, and a lot of buffaloes died in that park anyway. This season around, all the flamingos just went away. There's not a single flamingo there. It has a larger population of flamingos than Lake Bogoria, by the way, but not a single flamingo is there now, or at least the period I was there. And that has a significant impact on the tourism in that area, because the tourism to that area is flamingo-based tourism. But the entire park and the entire infrastructure, road infrastructure in the park, is submerged to an extent that actually to get to the other side of Baboon Hills, you have to get out of the park and enter the Baboon Hills from outside the park. And since the water came to the villages outside the park, the territory of the lake is outside the park. Outside the park. Do you think the government will even have courage to say that this is the territory of the lake and we are expanding the boundary of the park and get the votes next time? It's going to be a problem. So there is a geopolitical problem that is related to, you have to balance the needs. I mean, you have to hide behind allowing people to use the resources, and then you get the votes. And that's the problem we have. If you have access to parliament, and if you have a minister, if the PSS who are coming, there's an opportunity to go and meet them now and tell them about these problems. Of course, yesterday I had a conversation with a close link to Governor Jeboy now. And he said Governor Jeboy has visited the place and he says he wants to do something. And I was asked if I could now share the report that we did in 2013, 2014. And we'll do that. We'll go meet Governor Jeboy and tell him these are the issues. You don't have schools, 24 schools are gone. And what have you done? What will you do? Who do you want to assist you? It's up to him to ask for help. If you don't ask God for help, you never get help. If you don't ask another man for help, you never get help. Nobody will come and say, oh, I want to come and help you. You have to ask them. So we need to ask for help if we really need help. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, we can all do something about this by, tweeting some of the important work that has been presented here this morning, right? So by all means, tweet about this, and maybe we can get some more support for the cause here. We had one last question before break, so please.
All right. Good morning. My question goes to Professor Onywere. Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. And we can clearly see there's a lot of ecological challenges that has resulted due to the rise in the lake levels. But my concern is about health. And I've remembered I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Bibian, and I work at Kemri Wellcome Trust. And I'd like to ask, from your research and observations, what are some of the challenges, health challenges that are facing these communities as a result of the rise of the lake level? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. If we were to count the health challenges one by one, you will just give up. The first thing, Lake Bogoria environment, the whole of that environment is full of snakes. It's full of venomous snakes. You know those things that if they bite you, you get a problem immediately. It is full of those snakes. And the area is such that sometimes you don't even see the snake. You know, the stone can be there and the snake can be lying there and you actually don't see it. Okay, the colors of the snake somehow match with the colors of the environment. So it's a volcanotectonic environment that is rich in those things. And in that place, I can assure you, I even have photos of people who have been bitten by snakes anywhere in the body, from the ear here. You know, something is warm, then you do like this, and to the legs, to anything. That's one of the problems, okay? So, and there was an issue sometimes back, if you read the news, about the availability of antivenoms. And of course, when the presidential person was saying that we will produce antivenoms, I understood what he was talking about. Okay? So that is one. So, and you can imagine when the floods came, the snakes do a very simple thing. They just move to a dry ground. And they move to a dry ground that is warm. And you can be sure it is a house. You can be sure this we are bad. Are we together? It's not a very nice place to be in, but that is what happens there. That is problem number one. Problem number two, immediately you have stagnant water in any area and there is warmth, and you know what will happen. Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. You understand what I mean? So the issue of malaria and so on is a problem in that area. Apart from now, the bilharzia related diseases, where you step in the water and you have these snail kind of things that when they are still young, they can also get into your system. You get what? Bilharzia, it's called bilharzia related problems. That's another one. Then the second thing, that lake is also full of crocodiles. Those big things, they actually don't move very far from the shore, from the lake shore. So long as they were in the lake shore before, the people knew that around here you'll find a crocodile. So no problem. They were just living with the crocodiles. Now the water has come, they have no idea where the crocodile is. And the crocodile is waiting for food. Anytime. And if you go there, you'll actually find a lot of people who have been amputated legs and something, because it catches you somewhere and somehow it can even bite the leg and go. If it doesn't pull you into the water and you are finished. And of course, they will also tell you the losses they have had on the animals. I don't know whether that's a disease, but you get what I mean. The conflict between wildlife and human beings. And then, of course, there is the issue of the quality of the water. Every toilet in that place is actually underwater. You get what I mean? And these people you just fetch the water. The nearest water you get, you just fetch. If you have wood to boil it, that's okay. And then we have another significant problem in that lake, something called Prosopis tuliflora, matenge. If you look at the images, it looks very green. Actually, that greenness, apart from the browns you saw, if you saw any green on the images I showed you, that greenness is due to Prosopis tuliflora. Somehow, Prosopis tuliflora can survive in submerged water forever. That's not true with any other open land vegetation. But Prosopis can. And Prosopis has now taken colony. If you ever, even you, if you ever get pricked by a Prosopis tuliflora thorn, consider yourself amputated, period. And that's why the project on charcoal could not take place. We will harvest them to burn charcoal. I could give you numerous problems, okay? And come and visit me because I know what Rcmrd Trust can do. So.
You painted a very vivid picture of a situation where I don't want to be in. But it's a serious problem. We have one last question. A gentleman here in the front who had his microphone up for a while, and I forgot to look this way. So apologies.
So, my name is Angelo Sang from Kenya Airways, working as an integration developer. So, I'd like to ask my question in a different angle. So, assuming this is not a Kenyan problem, that question goes to Professor on the rising water lakes, in the lakes. Assuming this is not a Kenyan problem, it's a world issue, that is the planet Earth. Previously or initially, we used to have the active volcanoes. At some point, the volcanoes became dormant. And right now, we are no longer hearing about the volcanoes. That means that in the center of the planet Earth, we normally have the active, the magma, the hot magma, and there's always pressure. That's why we had the active volcanoes. And since you said in the year 2010, there was a fall of the water levels to a level whereby you thought the lakes were disappearing. And right now, the lakes are reclaiming their land. What if we think in this angle that the pressure that used to be released to the surface through the eruptions of the volcanoes is trapped at the center of the planet, so that at some level, the pressure is so high, causing the radius of the planet Earth to expand in a way. Meaning when it expands, the surface of the planet Earth increases. And in that angle, we'll be having the water level in the lakes across the world dropping. at some point now, after some time, the pressure will reduce because of that heated magma, and maybe it has fallen down, meaning the radius of the planet Earth will have reduced. If it reduces, it means that the Earth's surface will reduce in a way, leading to the rise of the water in the lakes. That is my point of view. So, why don't we make good use of what we've learned before about yesterday we heard about the satellites which have been deployed to the space. Why don't we make good use of those satellites? We capture the images, use machine learning, get to learn, get to know about the past. Let us see the rising water of this level. Let us try and see the trends. If it is after some years, there is this rise of water and there is this fall of water levels. This might be the reason. And if this happens to be the reason, my advice to our government system is that I think the government should reclaim land within this lakes region. And of course, we do know that the government do have property that is safe grounds. We can relocate our citizens to those grounds, and the government takes over those lands, such that in a way, since we normally know that the government property is not occupied, when this disaster happens, this rise of water levels, there will be no citizen on that area, meaning there will be no any alarm. And when there is water dropping levels, there will be no any urgent or emergency to be taken. So I would like we do more research on that. Let us employ that, and it will be so much gain if we look into that. That could be the cost. So my question came in form of a statement. Sorry for that.
So thank you very much for those statements and an explanation behind it. I think we can continue this discussion, but I think we're all ready for a break, and maybe the discussion can take further shape over coffee, tea, and refreshments. So we'd like to wrap up this session for now. So we've heard a lot about data, quality of data, analytics, and technology to take those two and actually provide actionable information. And thereby enhancing more resilient communities. So it's been really insightful. We've heard from some great speakers. So I'd like to have another round of applause for Professor Simon, Monica, and Professor Evan. Thank you all very much. Also the audience, thanks for coming. Thanks for being with us this morning here. And we'll see you after the break. Actually, no, I'm going to hand over for a couple of announcements for changes in program. Thank you very much.
Good morning. We need to give some round of applause for Lorraine. She's done a wonderful job. Yeah, that was a wonderful session, and we can actually engage the speakers after this because they are still around, I believe. So you can find them and engage them, and in case you want to reach them or get their contact, we ask their permission, we share their contacts, then you can have more discussion. So just wanted to make some few announcements. Number one, drinking water is at both entrances. If you need some drinking water, the guys there the ushers will provide the water, but if it doesn't get to you, kindly go to either of the entrances and get your drinking water. And then we have changed the sessions. So if you're going to the agriculture team session, agriculture and food distribution systems, we shall remain here after tea break. So if you're interested in that session, kindly you can finish your tea and come back here. And then if you're going for the early warning and disaster preparedness session, it's going to happen at the conference hall, ground floor. But we have ushers holding placards in case you get lost. You can ask at the reception, you can ask myself or our colleagues, or anyone at the registration if you find yourself lost. We are going to have, because of time, 30 minutes for health break. So we combine the health break. You can also pass through the booth and meet the speakers. Then from there, kindly let's keep time and go to the 2 sessions. In the afternoon, we shall also have 2 sessions. We have natural ecosystems and biodiversity conservation. We shall have it here. And then the capacity building session, we shall have it first floor, B7 is the computer lab there. But still we'll have ushers and placards, and we still remind you during the morning sessions. Kindly enjoy your tea and have a fruitful session. Thank you.
are better or worse than last year. We can also look at data sets that were created from predictive climate models to have a look at what the annual participation is going to look like in 2030. Very important data sets to start really forecasting what's going to happen. And of course, we can look at a combination of composite NDVI values and bringing in cropland mask, field boundaries, and crop scout data. And then we can really start doing that crop type mapping that we spoke about before. And then combining this with production data, we can really start making predictions on yield. And the next presentation will actually look more into that, looking at the further modeling and machine learning aspect of these kind of crop predictions. So looking longer term, we want to get an understanding of the impact of climate change on our agricultural lands, and specifically on the main staple crops like wheat and maize. So utilizing forecasted data sets, like for example the Land Cover 2050 data set, we can perform change detection over the 2020 land cover data set to get an understanding of where changes in agricultural lands are forecasted to take place. And this is a study that we did for Ethiopia. With that, we can then start building a suitability model using temperature, precipitation, and the soil pH to identify where croplands in 2050 are suitable for growing wheat in Ethiopia. And the results can be visualized in the dashboard, as we see here on the right. We can also then bring in production data and estimate the difference in yield in the different regions between 2000 and 2050. And this dashboard is really an example of a very easy to use information product, which really can be shared with decision makers for intervention and action. So really data is absolutely crucial in understanding the agricultural landscape and help us to increase production, improve food security, and plan for the future. By establishing a geospatial infrastructure, you can utilize technology to help streamline the processes of data collection, data management, making sure that the data is collected correctly, processed quickly, accurately, in the most efficient manner. You can then make it easily accessible for all stakeholders to create once and use it many times. The geospatial infrastructure provides the tools for mapping, visualization, and analysis. And with that data and analysis, we can create actionable information and share this information with the stakeholders in an easy way. So what's next, really? So in agriculture, we have this continuous stream of information that's coming in, and it's only going to get more. We already have tons of data, but the data is the new oil, as everybody says. It's only going to grow. Data is coming from imagery, data is coming from drones, it's coming from field workers. But with it comes a level of accuracy and understanding. The more data we have, the better we can train our models, and the more accurate forecasts we can create. And in turn, this provides more accurate forecasts for yields and also for decision making, obviously. So we really want to improve those practices to use technology and data to create that actionable information. And that will also help us with interventions to help plan for a more sustainable agricultural future. With that, I would like to finish. I think I'm right on time, hopefully. Thank you very much, and questions are going to come after. Thank you.
You can stick around. There are more chairs here. Okay. Thank you for that presentation, Lorian. I would like to also invite Abigail to take us through a presentation on the use of machine learning and GIS to predict how climate change will impact global wheat suitability and food security. Welcome. So you have the speaker on stage, and to go forward, you can press the green button.
Awesome, thanks. All right, hello everyone. My name's Abigail. I'm from Esri in California, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you today, sharing some of the work I've been doing over the last year on modeling the future of agriculture. So this is kind of branching off and a subset of what Lorian was just telling us all about. So we'll be diving deep into the machine learning component of agricultural modeling and agricultural risk assessment. And I'd like to highlight that this work was done over the past year at Esri with a lot of assistance from the USDA Agricultural Research Service in Maryland. All right, so what we're really looking at here is agriculture is becoming increasingly globalized. And what that means is that a conflict or a natural disaster in one country ripples out across the entire world. And the example that I've highlighted here is the invasion of Ukraine and how that has rippled across continents to impact food security globally. And what that means is we really need resilient systems to be able to overcome those global threats to agriculture that don't stay isolated in one place but can really impact millions of people around the globe. And to create resilient systems like this, one thing we really need to be paying attention to is climate change. So as Lorianne was just telling us, kind of the basis of all of this type of modeling is grow things where they grow best. I may have butchered that a little bit, but that's approximately what it was. But what happens when the place where things grow best is changing? And that's exactly what we're faced with when it comes to climate change. So the ideal habitat for certain crops is shifting, it's moving, it's going to, areas are warming and the areas suitable for crops are moving north or south to climates where they haven't been in a long time. So one way to address that is looking at data and modeling. And this image you see right below, that is rain-fed wheat across the entire globe. So this is the distribution of rain-fed wheat. As you can see, rain-fed wheat is concentrated in about 45 to 57 degrees of latitude, both in the southern and northern hemispheres. So we have a strong band of it across a lot of Europe, North America, specifically in central Canada and the United States, and a very strong amount also grown here in Kenya and also in Ethiopia. So these are kind of what we call the areas where things grow best, this 45 to 57 degrees of latitude. But as the climate warms, most likely that area won't stay suitable. So one way to address that is with species distribution models. And species distribution models are basically a form of machine learning where we teach a computer where things are currently existing and what the environmental conditions are there. So we can tell the computer that wheat is currently growing in these specific areas, and these specific areas also have certain temperature ranges, certain amounts of precipitation during certain points of the years, maybe certain elevations, types of soil, etc. So when the model learns that, it can also extrapolate into the future once we give it future climate data. And let's break down exactly how that works. So it's a little bit of a complicated process. Again, it can take a really long time to run, but I'll give you about a 1-minute crash course. So basically, the way that this was all conducted is we used 100,000 training points around the entire globe, and this is what that looked like on the Horn of Africa. So each of those little blue dots, that is basically a data collection point. Each of those points has a binary field, a yes or no field saying, is there wheat there, which is the image with the yellow representing wheat, or is there not wheat there? So that tells us, trains the model on where wheat is and where wheat isn't. And the image right behind that, that is daily high temperature in the summer. So this is also teaching our model where wheat is growing in relationship to how hot it can get in the hottest portions of the year. And I'd like to also highlight that this wheat data came from NASA cropland database, which has really wonderful 1-kilometer resolution data for some major crop varieties around the world, and is another kind of amazing way that you can use open access data to do this type of analysis. And all the environmental data is from WorldClim, so it's a really holistic picture of the biosphere. And then we also included slope and elevation data as well. All right. So all of this modeling was done in ArcGIS Pro. Within ArcGIS Pro, you can implement Maxent directly. So it's a really kind of streamlined process where you can do the initial data collection, look at the relationships, do the modeling, and then kind of create the results from there. And what this can also tell us is some really interesting statistics about the temperature requirements of crops, like the range in which they are most found, when certain crops like to get their most rainfall, things like that, and it can give us a really good sense of accuracy for this entire modeling. So our whole modeling process here had about a 96% accuracy in terms of how much the data or the model was able to correctly classify where wheat was and where wheat wasn't. Oh, it's a tongue twister. But basically, 2 outputs you see here. I know they're a little bit small, but I'll do my best. These are our 2020 or our baseline wheat suitability maps. Again, you can see that 45 to 57 degrees of latitude range. And then the one below that is the change in wheat suitability by 2050. So it's a little hard to see, but if you look closely, specifically in, let's say, North America right there, you can see that the green has gotten a lot lighter, kind of yellow. that's an indication that wheat is becoming less suitable there. Particularly in that part of the United States, we're looking at really extreme warming, up to 7 degrees Fahrenheit in some places, or about 3-4 degrees Celsius. So that's one area where we're going to see a lot of risk further on. Also, if you look across Eurasia, you're seeing a big jump north in latitude, which is pretty significant because that means that while we were talking about how agricultural risks ripple across the world, this means that the potential to grow wheat is going to be concentrated in fewer and fewer countries, specifically in northern latitudes, as that climate becomes more hospitable for wheat. But what's really important here is that we're not powerless in this. And I'd like to highlight, first of all, that this data comes with the worst case scenario climate data. So if we did nothing to prevent climate change, we kept all of our emissions increasing, this is what we'd be looking at. So first of all, we have the capacity to change that, and we're already on that track. And second of all, just being able to model all of this means that we have the capacity to anticipate and respond to those risks before they even hit us. So for example, this is looking at the change in wheat suitability, specifically in the Middle East. And what we're seeing is areas in kind of orange or red. Those are areas where wheat suitability is decreasing, particularly due to drought and due to higher temperatures. And then wheat suitability is increasing at particularly high altitude places in the Caucasus Mountains right there. Those climates are typically cooler, they will be warming. Them warming means they're going to be more suitable for wheat. So knowing all of this in advance means that we can anticipate the risks and we can begin to prepare for them. So that means things like we can change our irrigation patterns and our use of water to respond to risks like drought. We can look at different types of drought-resistant varieties of wheat. We can look at different kind of crop rotation and planting schedules to be able to do all of that. So it's not by any means saying that, we are faced with calamity here. We have the capacity to anticipate these risks and respond to them. And this is another way to summarize all of that data. So if you look at this image here, on the left, again, we see our areas growing the most wheat currently. And then this kind of graph portion on the right of that is showing us the changes in wheat suitability. So the yellow line is the baseline. That's where we see most wheat growing today. And the red line is the same thing, but for 2050. So anywhere where the yellow line is kind of above the red line, that means that wheat suitability is decreasing. So we see a pretty significant decrease for most of the globe, to be honest, but above areas of 55 degrees of latitude, as those areas warm kind of disproportionately in relation to the rest of the world, that's where we'll see kind of increases in wheat suitability. Yeah, so that wraps up my presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and I really look forward to taking all of your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Abigail, for that. I think we, just to reiterate, note down any questions that you may have, and we'll handle it just after the last presentation. I would like to welcome the next presenter. I don't know if they are around, on assessment of vegetation loss. Yeah, please welcome Chineye Mezie from the College of Education in Nsuge. I hope I got everything right. Yeah, but if I got something right, please, sorry for that. So to go ahead, you can press that, and then the slides are there.
Thank you. Hi. Okay, since I'm the only Nigerian here, permit me to greet you in my local dialect. So I'm from Igbo, and we say Otutuoma, which is good morning, everyone. Okay, my name is Chineye Mezie, and I'm a licensed unmanned area vehicle pilot. I'm a geographer and a GIS analyst, maybe a baby GIS analyst, because I'm still new in the system. Okay, this work was actually done with, I did it with my project supervisor, my academic advisor in school, Mafuri College of Education in Subi. And the Joseph TV there is actually my startup company, a media company per se. So we're trying to use drones to, in different sectors of anything, agriculture, in constructions, and the rest of them. Okay. This paper analyzed the impact of urban development on vegetation loss within Anambra East Local Government Area of Anambra State. And satellite imagery was used, and the NDBI and NDVI, which is a normalized difference vegetation index and normalized difference BTOP index, was used. And the data sets were extracted from the images, ascertaining the spatial and temporal trends of the urbanization and its effects on vegetation within the study area. Yeah, and that is me. Okay, so this is a map of Nigeria showcasing the map of Anambra State, and then the map of Anambra State indicating my study area, which is Anambra East. Fortunately, this is where I actually attended my higher education. Nigeria is faced with a whole lot of problems, and vegetation is also not, vegetation loss is not left out, which is the reason why we actually venture into it, because we get to find out that the area of the Anambra East has started losing a whole lot of lands for agricultural product, because it's one of the main areas in Anambra that ventures into agriculture. And then we find out that the agriculture that's been experiencing changes on the rate of the agricultural produce due to urbanization and migration changes. The methodology we used, we downloaded the LASA data from the USGS Earth Explorer. The thematic mapper was downloaded for the 30th January 1980, the enhanced thematic mapper and the rest of them. So it's actually experimental research. It is for the evaluation of the effects of urbanization on vegetation, and the research is based on physical observation of the character of the topography of the research area, inventory taking of the land use, land cover in the study area, and the use of GIS to collect ground, GPS, to collect ground control points to be fed in the system for imagery analysis. And the data of these activities will form the findings and conclusion of the study. Okay, when we got the Landsat data, and this is what we were able to find. The images, the three images on top is the NDVI, Normalized Different Vegetation Index, from the 3 years that we used, from 1986, 2003, and 2020. Then the one other is the NDBI, which is Normalized Difference Built-Up Index. And then we found out that because of the increase in built-up areas in the area, we led to reduction in vegetation in the area. So what was the cause? It was because of the higher institution that was built there. And you know what urbanization is all about? When a rural area starts transforming into an urban area, which will also lead to a whole lot of buildings and constructions take place, and then when all these things start taking place, there will be a reduction in the vegetation, in the vegetative practices, which leads to poor or maybe a reduction in food productions. So, and then we also find out that when this school was sited there, then a lot of people who are also into, who will be coming from different places to study, and because they are there, of course they need houses to live in, and they start building houses. And then they'll be like, okay, they are here, what if they want to buy food? They start building restaurants and everything, and that's how it started improving and then losing its reality. Okay, so we ended up making a recommendation because we found out that since the agricultural practices are already reducing due to urbanization, a whole lot of vegetation loss. So we made a recommendation for city planning. It's very necessary that there will be a proper urban and regional planning that will take place. And permit me to say this, that when I came to Kenya, one of the things that interested me is the way they plan their cities. Everything there is actually in line, the way the buildings are, it's very interesting. It's quite different from what we have in Nigeria. I'm sorry. So you get to find out that many houses they just want to come and build on the roads. There's no space. There is no you don't think you just build houses, fine houses. I mean. So we also recommended the use of remote sensing and GIS because we find out that it was easier for us to make our analysis using GIS and remote sensing, which cannot be achieved using the traditional mapping techniques. And we also recommended that because of the impact of population growth and urban expansion of vegetative cover, that is a continual phenomenon. This research is therefore not an end to the issue of loss of vegetative cover to urban expansion. Therefore, further studies into spatial temporal pattern of urban expansion and the resulting effects is recommended. So the conclusion, the results of this research revealed that between 1986 and 2020, there had been a consistent increase in the spatial extent of built-up areas within the study area, with this class covering 30% of the entire study area in 2020, whereas it was covering a major 11% in 1986, and it was discovered that while the spatial extent of the built-up of the study increases, the corresponding decline in vegetative cover was also observed between the periods of the study area. And also, there's something I missed when I was showing. How can I go back? Sorry. Okay, I can go back. Okay. So when I was showing the maps, there is actually a place where the mean and the mean of the NDVI and the mean of the NDBI. You find that from 1986, it was 0.32, that is the vegetative index. And you find that there's been a consistent decrease to 2020, that is 0.14, that's very bad. And then built up area from negative sign 0.02, it has increased into 0.24. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, presenters. I'm not sure, we had a video that we faced challenges playing. Is it okay now? It's fine?
Why carbon sellers try